Welcome to СивиЛNet. My guest today is Mr. André Gümüşcan. He is a Belgian-Armenian entrepreneur and also the founder of a new organization, My Forest Armenia. The non-profit organization aims to decrease carbon in the atmosphere and increase forest coverage in Armenia. Welcome, Mr. Gümüşcan.
I'm glad to be here. Well, the goal is actually threefold, but let's say the most important ones are to decrease carbon in the atmosphere, and the second one to increase forest coverage in Armenia. At the same time, we realized while preparing all that we're also helping rural communities in the villages across Armenia. But if you want, let's go back to the first goal. Actually, the idea was I all of a sudden realized, and this is less than a year ago, how much 1 liter of gas produces in CO2. People don't realize that 1 liter of gas produces 2.3 kilo of CO2. Everybody thinks 50 or 100 grams. So I realized this was a huge number, and then I understood why this problem is so big, and it is indeed huge, and we need to do something, and everybody needs to do something in order to preserve the planet, and mainly preserve the living conditions for the young generations like yourselves or your future children and whatever. And I realized that despite being a diehard environmentalist, I'm vegan, I don't eat meat, I don't eat dairy products, I have solar panels in my house, still my carbon footprint was very high. Why? Because of all the plane travel. And plane is pretty intensive in terms of carbon emissions. So rather than just offsetting and contributing to other organizations, there are many organizations that are planting trees to offset carbon footprint. I decided, well, why not create my own organization, and instead of planting in Mozambique or Borneo or Brazil, why not plant in Armenia? And that's how I decided to found this organization to offset carbon footprint, and at the same time it will be done in Armenia.
You said that you mostly live in Belgium. You're
Yes.
from, as I said, you're Belgian-Armenian, and you're pretty active in the community. You could have stayed in Belgium and create this organization because in Belgium, because that's a kind of organization we also need in Europe. Doesn't make any exception, but why crossing the Belgian borders and come to Armenia specifically? What is specifically important for you in Armenia?
It's a good question, but I guess probably many of the viewers will realize that it is, we all have Armenian blood and DNA running inside our genes, and it's to do it in Armenia. Well, I know we knew each other back in Belgium, but as a matter of fact, I'm active in Armenia for the last, I would say the last 10 years, but the last 3 years very intensively, because I'm a member of the board of trustees of the Tufenkian Charitable Foundation, the Artsakh branch. So I'm already very active for the last 3 years in financing projects in Artsakh, various types of projects regarding, structure, infrastructure, families, various type of helps, even help for the army. Also, I realized while talking to you that I'm also a member of the board of the European Friends of Armenia. And on that level, we organized journalist visits to Artsakh, mainly, well, of course, Armenia and Artsakh, but mainly Artsakh. And it has been 3 years I've been doing that, and I realized how efficient was the work of journalists. And I guess to yourself, this is one of the most important thing we can do is help journalists everywhere and help foreign journalists come to Armenia. So I've been involved in Armenia already for a long time. I'm starting also to do a small real estate project here in Armenia. And well, because it's a little bit slow, then I decided also, well, why not create this NGO? And for obvious reasons, well, there are three reasons, you know, again, because I'm Armenian, Armenian origin, although I'm born and my father's born in Belgium, my grandfather came 120 years ago to Belgium, so it's a very long time ago. Armenia, and the most important thing, Armenia needs to increase its forest coverage, and much more than France does and Belgium does. And there are enough good people there already active in the field, and the governments there are also not everywhere, heavy players as well. And here, although I do see a raise in consciousness, they are all of a sudden now realizing the importance of it. And very recently, the government has been acting also on that field, and that's a very positive sign.
Specifically, you say that actually, as you know, in October there was a forest summit that took place for the very first time here in Armenia, and there is, as far so the forest coverage you just talked about is just 10% of forest coverage here in Armenia, and the goal of this forest summit, and one of the key points, was to increase the coverage from 10 to 20% by 2050. How do you think that such a goal could be accomplished? What would be your organization's contributions to achieve this goal exactly?
Well, that's it. That's a very good question. It's a very broad question. Let me start by saying that, you know, anybody who plants trees in Armenia, they're welcome, whoever it is. Obviously, I get very often the question, why didn't you join ATP? And ATP is fantastic, and I met Caroline Mugar.
Yeah, Armenia Tree Project is one of the most active organization.
Well, it is. I think it's the only organization active in planting trees so far. Now there's a second one. So Armenia Tree Project was started 25 years ago by Caroline Mugar, whom I met, and I knew her uncle, as a matter of fact. And she started that 25 years ago, and my hat's off to her for creating such an organization in times where, I mean, that was the least prominent subject on people's minds. So they are planting about 200,000 trees per year. We, as My Forest Armenia, our aim, or let's say medium-term goal, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years we should be able to reach that. We're planning to plant 400,000 trees a year. So it's already quite ambitious, because it's double what Armenia Tree Project is doing. But I think that can be done. It's it's always nice to set yourself some big goals ahead. So that is our objectives. Now, the doubling of the forest coverage of Armenia is, of course, a very desirable outcome, and I'm glad that the government, you know, has such objectives. I must say that the objectives of doubling was made by the previous government to double by 2050. It seems that the new government would like to take this task as well, and I would say that's fantastic, although that requires many more trees to be planted. In fact, many more trees to be planted, because to reach that objectives, you would need to plant every year 26 million trees. So can it be done? People ask me, can it be done? Yes, everything can be done if you put sufficient resources into it, if it becomes a national program, and if the whole country is mobilized to planting trees. And I mean, the whole country is doing that. The army, the students, everybody is doing that. And there's at the same time a commitment to find the lands where to put it. It probably can be done, but there are also limitations. I mean, I'm sure the country and Nikol Pashinyan, they have also other objectives as well that have to be, you know, taken care of, and not do that. Obviously, we will play a part in that. I cannot tell you now, you know, how quickly we'll reach the 400,000, and if we will go beyond the 400,000. I hope that we will reach 4 million, but I want to keep my feet on the ground. because planting trees and increasing forest coverage is much more complicated than it seems. So that's why I want to be very realistic, let's say, and not have crazy plans. If you want to, I can give you a few words about why is it difficult, because there are 3 steps to making a forest. First, you have to have the seedlings. I mean, it's not like you can go to the supermarket and give me 100,000 seedlings. You have to grow them yourselves or buy them from outside. Buying from outside has problems because you risk importing plants that are invasive, that will grow very fast, but at the end of the day, they will submerge Armenia's forests. They might bring disease, they might not be adapted. So you need to grow local species. And by the way, I want to say that we're very interested, and I'm glad my project manager, Vardan Petrosyan, we have exactly the same view. Quality is important. Why? Because fighting climate change and biodiversity go hand in hand. You cannot have better forest coverage or better forests without ensuring that biodiversity remains. It happens to be, and it was confirmed at the Forest Summit, that Armenia has one of the richest biodiversity in the region. I mean, more so than Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. At the same time, we have a rich biodiversity, but the forest coverage of Turkey is 27%. Georgia is 41%. Armenia is only 11.2%. Well, that's the official number. The problem is also, and they said at the conference, that there's a lack of reliable figures in the country, and they're busy assessing the data to see what is the exact forest coverage, what can be planted, how much land do we have available to reforest. These are all very difficult questions that need to be resolved. So I started with the nursery. Now is the planting. Well, actually, planting is the easiest thing. It's the easiest thing. You take the seedlings, you go in the land, you put them in the ground, and you go. After that, that is the real difficulty. You have to water the young saplings at least the first 2 years, and you have to maintain them. If you plant a small tree, it'll be this big. I don't know if you can see it, but the grass around it will grow 5 times its height, much quicker than the tree will grow, and it will suffocate the plant. So you need to cut the grass around it, etc. You need to prevent animals from grazing and eating the plant. So all that work needs to be done afterwards to ensure that the seedlings you're planting will become mature trees. It takes about 6 years, and we are committed to use the resources we will have, hopefully from the public, to maintain the plots of land where we will plant the seeds. Just as an explanation, the maintenance is more complicated and also more costly. More costly because, for example, if you plant a seedling, it costs maybe 50 cents, and we're asking $5 per tree. Why? Because if you need to water, you need to send a worker to the field to give water, and it takes as long to give water to that plant than it is to plant it. And if you have to send that worker 4 or 5 times during the summer, well, that's 4 or 5 times the cost of planting, and that for 2 years. Maintenance is the same thing. You need to send the workers many times over, so that to ensure that these trees will grow and become mature trees. So it's not that easy. And well, that's.
And financially, how are you going to ensure the costs? Where
we're going to get the finances? Well, obviously, as the founder of the association of the NGO, I'm financing the upfront cost at the beginning. We have a website, and in the website, and this is also a little different, and I think it's a new thing in Armenia, there is a carbon calculator. So you can actually go on the website, take the carbon calculator, and calculate how much carbon emissions you do. There are different tabs, so you can check how much your house is giving out, your car, your plane, and etc. But the most striking example is the planes. So just roughly 1 hour of flying time per person per hour is 200 kilo of CO2 emissions. It's very simple. We come from Belgium, Brussels to Yerevan. Direct flight is 4.5 hours. So round trip is 9 hours. 9 times 200 kilo is 1.8 ton. And you've done just one trip and you've already polluted, you've already emitted as much as the whole country, as much as one person in the country emits in 1 year, just by doing one trip. So I would say, and I'm very grateful, apparently Ryanair is soon coming to Yerevan. It brings lots of tourists, that's great. Let's hope that they all offset their trip and contribute to increasing forest coverage. Anyway, that website helps you calculate how much you are polluting, how much carbon you're emitting, and then you can decide to offset that, you can decide to offset your CO2 emissions by planting trees and making a donation that will go towards planting trees. So I hope that this will be successful. I think it will be successful, frankly speaking. I think all of us, should do something. I mean, this is what everybody's saying, that we all have to do something to combat global warming. And I think it's the duty of each of us, you, I, and all others, to offset the pollution we have caused. I feel personally it is not right, that although we didn't know it, none of us knew, but that all of our travels have caused such damages to the environment. I told my 3 daughters, who are your age or maybe a little bit more, that, and they're all 3 of them vegan and environmentalists, that I think it's logical that every person should offset not only last year's pollution, but all of one's lives. I don't, my personal view is that I don't go to your house, leave garbage on the floor in your living room, and I leave it to you to clean it up. So it's a duty, I think, for all of us to clean up what the pollution we have done during our stay, our short stay in this planet.
In your program, I think during the Forest Summit, one of the key that was highlighted even by experts from abroad was the community, local community, involving them. So do you also plan to involve Armenian local communities within the process of planting trees and also maintaining them? Absolutely.
And I think we had this plan from the beginning, but actually I must say that the Forest Summit was extraordinary. I really, I will see them later on very, very shortly. We have during the press conference, there is, and I will again congratulate them. I did, and I will again congratulate them. It was an excellent presentation. Many very good speakers came, and we learned many things. Even I mean, we always learned many things, and I was particularly touched by the presentation of a man from Kenya.
David Matenge.
David Matenge.
He works for a Green Belt.
Green Belt Movement. The Green Belt Movement, which was nominated to the Nobel Peace Prize, if I remember well, in 2004, or it could be 2014, I don't remember. The founder of Green Belt Movement, and I found the way they organized themselves was brilliant. And I said to my staff, we should do exactly the same thing. Well, obviously with adaptation to the Armenian landscape and involve communities.
How do you involve them?
Well, exactly. What they do, and I think this is the right way to go about it. We will go to communities and first raise awareness and ask who is willing to participate in a group to create nurseries and to reforest part of their land. When we have a positive response from these communities and they are willing to organize themselves and create a group, the key point in David Matenge's presentation was that they are registered as a local, let's say, branch, and they also are given legal status. And that is also very important. It's a key part because it's about empowerment. It gives the local villagers control of what they will do. Of course, we're there to help, from the technical side, providing the seeds, explaining them how to start nurseries, explaining them how to plant and maintain forests. And then, as Dr. Metenge was saying, is that we don't pay them. We compensate them after the work is done and after the trees are starting to grow. And I went a step further. I said to my team, we should compensate them every year for the first 6 years, according to the number of trees that are growing and that are surviving. And that's very important. So for me personally, I learned quite a bit. It was very interesting. And indeed, communities are key. We will not reforest Armenia unless the people in the rural villages and the communities agree and, let's say, 100% to this goal of reforesting Armenia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gümüşen, for this talk.
Very good.
Thank you for watching and continue to follow CivilNet.